to the 15th meeting for fiscal year 2013 of the Milton Planning Board. I'm Alex Whiteside, the chairman, and with me are
Michael Kelly, member.
Emily Ennis, member.
Ed Duffy, member.
William Clark, planning director.
Jean Peterson, clerk.
Mr. Lynch has the flu, so he won't be here, but we've got a chair so that he can be with us in spirit. Now, we're going to meet again in 2 weeks on January 24th, and since the selectmen seem to have gotten out of sync, and so they'll probably meet in 2 weeks also, even though they're meant to meet on the first and third Thursdays. They're now taking up our time slot. So we will probably meet in the Carol Blute conference room unless the warrant committee has gotten it. We have it. All right. Okay. And then we will meet again on February 14th
Typical.
in the Carol Blute conference room, and we will hope, although it may be, we may change it to the John Cronin conference room if the selectmen are able to get back on schedule. We will wait and see. Okay. Now, we're going to, we've got some minutes. We've got October 18th, but I think that we should wait for Mr. Lynch to be here for the minutes of the 18th, so we will postpone October 18th one more time. And I have, on the 13th, I've made a few changes, which I can
Are they
circulate.
material?
And on the, well, we'll circulate the 13th. It might be that we just want Jean to type these up and we'll do them again,
I think that makes sense. Do you
because there are
have-
quite a few changes.
Yeah, let's have that.
So Jean, here are some changes, and we will do this again
Thanks.
next time
Okay.
in the Carol Blute conference room. Now we've got the portion of the meeting where citizens who are at all dissatisfied with the board get to express their dissatisfactions.
We're satisfied.
Yeah, I'm positive.
Go for the positive.
Well, no, the satisfied citizens, we did not ask satisfied citizens to come in today. We only asked dissatisfied citizens. And seeing none,
I see your point. It's a good point. I like it.
we will pass on to the report of the town planner.
All right. I've been dealing with issues dealing with East Milton, and the redevelopment traffic pattern down there. Getting ready for trying to put together something for the design engineering for the reconfiguration. Some of the planning board projects, the Hillside Street issue with Mr. Flynn, town council, dealing with Forest Street. 71 Forest Street was a subdivision that was approved by the board in 1999, still has some outstanding issues that, as the last lot gets developed. Talking with the developer for 683, 685 Brush Hill Road. He actually filed for his demolition permit the other day. He is in his appeal period right now, which will be over the 22nd of January. Doing some of the last minute touch up to the 86 Walcott, which you'll be signing tonight. Working on some of the town meeting articles between the planning board and the board of selectmen. Working on some of the public forum for the master plan, which I'm sure Mrs. Innes will get into in a little while. Dealing with some of the rink overview issues. And trying to finish up the Green Communities final report. We're still waiting for the wind turbine arbitrator's decision, still not out. And affordable housing. There is a public meeting tonight at Town Hall, which is why we're not in the blue conference room, for the 2 units at 36 Central. The applications for those are due the 25th of February. The lottery for that will be the end of March. Then there's a review period for the documentation that you have to turn in, and the closing will be at the end of May. So people will be in by the end of May. That's 2 one-bedroom units. The particulars on it would be that the units are available for $156,500, and the income for 80% in the metro area is $45,500. A 2-person household would be $52,000. This is a 1-bedroom with a den, so I don't think you'd be looking for 3 and 4 people in it. You have some things before you, and one of the ones I'd like to bring up is the one that the medical marijuana article, which is the page with the circle on the top. There's 3 placeholder articles. On that, if you look at it, it says something about zoning. And as we talk about zoning, my suggestion to Town Council, to the Board of Health, and to the Selectmen, and now to you, would be that we look to, let me back one step. Since the election in November, there was a referendum question on the ballot. It passed by 59% in Milton. It passed by a bigger margin in the state. The State Department of Public Health is due to come up with regulations that will be, they come out May 1st. There is going to be 1 dispensary in each county. We don't know where in the county. We don't know how many. We know there's supposed to be 1, but there could be more. We don't know much about it. We would rather be proactive than reactive. And one of the ways we could potentially do this is to take our existing adult entertainment language, use it, and put it in the same area as adult entertainment. That could be our placeholder for moving into town meeting, at which point by that time we will just be getting the regulations out May 1st. We have town meeting May 6th. It gives us something that we can work with. It may be that the board decides that they actually want to take and change and make this available at medical institutions. So it could be the hospital, it could be a nursing home, it could be doctor offices. We're not sure what those regulations are going to say, but it is an issue that the Board of Health is looking at, the selectmen are looking at, the police chief is looking at. Because of the issue of identifying specific areas, now you're talking zoning, it is suggested that the planning board take a look at it and potentially think about coming up with a recommendation during the public hearings that would use your adult entertainment language as a starting point to develop a recommendation.
No, I have received a communication from an attorney named Dan Hill, who has drafted what he says is a model bylaw for these dispensaries, and I will circulate that because he's a pretty good lawyer, and I anticipate that it may be just what we want.
The Mass Planners Listserv has been back and forth on this issue with some towns looking to regulate now. and some towns looking to wait until the Board of Health, the Massachusetts State Board of Health comes out with its regulations in May. There doesn't seem to be a clear consensus yet. as to
Mass
doing one.
planners,
Mass planners, what did I say?
master plan.
Oh, sorry,
Mass-
mass
The
planners.
master
Plan.
plan is
Mass
exactly.
planners,
Which
listserv,
is
yes.
It's a listserv made up of the professional planners from the state and members of different planning boards.
And the general planning community, there's lawyers on there who talk about
there's
land
lots
use
of it.
issues and all of that. So, so yeah, there's no clear consensus from them so far as which way to go.
At least 4 days a week, there's something on there about.
Exactly. What is your
marijuana.
community doing? So, yeah.
So we'll do something.
Thank you.
And just doing something that, as I understand it, the 180 days on Hillside Street is up early next
Tuesday.
week.
Next
So
Tuesday,
something needs to be filed with the town clerk
Mr.
before then.
Lynch and Mr. Kelly are due to meet with Mr. Flynn, 6 o'clock Monday night.
Okay.
That's it for my report, except for going into the pieces that Mrs. Innes requested that I bring to the meeting tonight.
What did you bring?
Will lead her into.
Is this
her
a show
discussion.
and tell?
It's a show and tell.
Let's do show and tell. I like it.
What we have here is a build-out map that was done by Metropolitan Area Planning Council in 2004 or 6.
I want to say 4.
Okay.
It doesn't
Let's go
matter.
with that,
I
yeah.
did it, I don't remember, 2004, 2006. What's in purple on this map are the developable lands in the town. Some of those have already been filled in. Some of them, like that very big one.
It's Cunningham Park.
No, that's Wallace and Golf Course.
Yeah.
Oh,
Cunningham Park's further up.
okay. The Cunningham Park is the big one.
Yeah.
Right up
further
there.
up, yeah.
That's where Mr. Duffy was born.
That's Cunningham. It's what? Those are the two probably biggest places in town that don't have conservation restrictions on them, that are still considered developable. Some of the others have since been, some of the stuff up off of Harlan Street, Hillside Street, conservation restrictions have been placed on some of those. Some of the ones up by the marsh, conservation restrictions have come in on those. As you start to work on a housing production plan, this is one of the maps that you'll be using. The other map would be the zoning map. The other would be some of the land use constraints map. There's a series of 6 maps that went with this plan. I have them all here. They're all available. I'm trying to get them all onto the website. They
Okay.
should be on the master plan website shortly.
And those will be in PDF form, so
Yes.
people can download them,
So they can
okay,
download them too.
great. I asked for this because some of the members of the master plan committee have requested that we start looking at maps that give us an idea of where change can occur, because there are developable parcels like this. One question is, are these developable under current zoning, or are they developable if somebody, for example, brings a bunch of parcels together and puts, are there more parcels that would be available, for example, to a 40B? Or is this all parcels that are simply unbuilt on, or are
These
these?
would be the ones that right now are fairly large and unbuilt.
Okay,
Yes,
so,
you could do that, and no, they're not here.
okay,
If you go back to, one of the others is constraints, which is
Mhm.
why I said there's another one that talks
Yes.
about constraints. That would talk about the zoning, that would bring in the zoning,
mm-hmm,
and that is, it's actually underneath this one.
we can look at it next
Next.
time, yeah.
There's another component to this, and that is if you look at one of the maps in there talked about what things we should look at.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those was putting conservation restrictions on certain properties.
Right.
Looking to rezone certain properties, looking to create medical zoning areas.
Mhm.
There's some of the things that we've done, a lot of them we haven't.
So I wanted to use this opportunity because we've started to look at maps, although not these yet, at the public forum on the 26th at Tucker School, starting from 9, ending at 12. We'll be looking at aerials rather than these. These may come into the second public forum. But we, as a board, as we look at the housing production plan in particular, and also as we go forward with what we're doing in the master plan process, need to start getting familiar with what these maps are and what they say. So, and this was a good opportunity, since we just had our meeting on Tuesday, to ask Bill to bring them in so we can start getting familiar with them.
There was a concern expressed back in 2004 and 2006 that these maps are actually not particularly accurate.
They would have to be updated. There's been great strides in GIS. It's interesting because our consultant team brought in a map on Tuesday, and they said, you know, we use the state-based layers, and they're not, in fact, accurate. So they're working with the town GIS data, which
Okay,
is much
right,
more accurate.
exactly.
These would have to be updated. As Bill said, there have been changes just on the conservation restrictions. So as we go forward, all of these would be updated, but gives you an idea of what we're starting to have to look at.
I really like Alex's comment, because most of the data that was collected for those restricted areas are the ones that I did. But it's all right, because what happens is you have conservation restrictions that had timelines on them,
Right.
and some of them expired over time. Case in point, one of the large property up on Brush Hill Road for the 40B
Mm-hmm.
had a conservation restriction, it had a forestry plan to go with it, but it expired. And we didn't really realize that it had expired, but there's a few of those. There's a lot of conservation restrictions that are older that have drop dead dates to them.
Mm-hmm.
They were for 25 to 30 years, not necessarily perpetuity.
I just actually stumbled across something that was about something else in planning, but talked about the fact that there were different conservation restrictions and different lengths of time. I hadn't realized that, so it's
And
definitely
that-
something
that-
we'll want to
that
look
kind
at.
of
Yeah.
Cropped up at those hearings when we
Mhm.
talked about the, when you heard Emily talking about, our public forum, you each have a copy of the flyer in your packet tonight. You will start seeing these things coming around town. There's actually going to be one running on the cable station. That's our commercial for trying to get more people to this session.
It's on a Saturday, right?
It's Saturday morning. We're doing the
Saturday,
first one on the
26th,
Saturday.
9 to 12 at Tucker School.
Absolutely. We're looking for as many people who
Are you
can
serving
come.
coffee and,
The planning consultants have suggested that we will provide refreshments on that flyer, so we will have refreshments.
very nice, that will
yeah.
be a draw.
Food's always a draw.
We intend to have 3 of these public sessions, the last one being everything that's been garnered throughout the year. The first one being at Tucker School, the next one will be someplace else in a different part of town.
Mhm.
You're looking to move this thing around and get input from all over town. I think if you look at the makeup of the committee itself, we attempted to get a person from every precinct. So we're not looking to just have it on the east side of town or just on this side of town. We're looking to see, we want everybody's opinion to come up.
Absolutely. This is the time where if you have concerns or questions or really want your ideas for Milton to be heard, this is the time to come, because we're going to be doing workshops, doing mapping exercises, collecting all of your ideas and your visions. The planning consultants, Brown Walker, will pull those all back together. We'll have a second one at which we'll do different topics than we're doing for this one. And then the third one is the one where they present all of the results. So this is absolutely the time to come and join the conversation on the vision for this town.
All right, that's the master plan update. Let's sign this Walcott Road decision. Now, this decision is going to have annexed to it this declaration of trust,
Yep.
which has,
Do we have to sign that as well?
no, we don't have to sign it, but we do want it annexed at some point.
It's specifically mentioned within the
It is
document
mentioned
itself.
as being annexed. So, we'll, we'll do it this way.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
The blue?
Yes.
As long as at least one of them is blue, is that okay? Good.
Or Mr. Clark could make a thumbprint on it.
Wax seal.
Yeah, really. To go with our robes, Mike.
Go. Go.
Whoops, sorry.
Okay.
Let us know, because, you know, it's getting late in the game, isn't it?
One more coming your way, Ed?
One more?
Yep.
All right, now, Bill, are we going to give these to you?
Gene,
Okay,
I'm gonna put them right in the box, right beside Gene.
all right. And where, is this mine?
Mine.
Remember, I brought one in.
Yes. Yes.
Shall I take this one with me?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Let us know.
Now, interestingly enough, I received a telephone call from Mr. Sheffield today regarding the little parcel of land on Blue Hill Avenue that, was it Weston Associates?
Yeah.
Wanted to do a project on, but the neighbors got together and said that they liked the sort of general derelictness of the property, the way it is, and Mr. Sheffield said that the developer was not interested in going forward.
Okay,
So,
good to know.
that makes it easier with the zoning that we have proposed because we did not make provision for it.
Right.
And so that's useful. Any update on that article beyond that update? We'll ask you and then we'll ask Mr. Paul Sullivan, who has joined us. Do you have any updates, Paul?
On the article,
On the assisted living article? You don't have to have an update.
I did. I actually talked to Ned Corcoran, who is the lawyer for the project today. He is not coming today. He didn't have anything to add to it. Between now and your next meeting, it is the intention of the Grillias to bring Deborah Felton and a few others out to Stoughton to tour that facility. They'll be ready to talk about it at your next meeting.
And basically, they're going to discuss affordability and how much affordability you can reasonably anticipate or reasonably require in a zoning bylaw. And it isn't easy, but we will get a full explanation.
Okay.
All right. Now, as you recall, at our last meeting, we had a discussion of a housing production plan.
Yes.
And a housing production plan is something provided for in the 40B regulations. And it basically is a blueprint for subsidized housing development in town. That subsidized housing is housing that counts on what's known as the subsidized housing inventory. It's not affordable housing to be countable needs to be somehow subsidized by the state, even though this was simply because when it was originally put together, the state was in fact providing money for the housing that was being counted. And in budget crunches thereafter, the state stopped providing subsidies, but the law remained on the books that it had to be subsidized affordable housing. And the state said, well, we help you with your developments by, when you call us up on the phone, we talk to you, and that's in effect a subsidy. And it's, in any event, it is the subsidized housing inventory, and it's supposed to be subsidized. And the housing production plan offers a blueprint on how the town intends to go about producing subsidized housing. And we had a citizen Marvin Gordon, at the last meeting suggesting that time was wasting on this and that we should have a special town meeting to secure funding for a housing production plan and presumably authority to conduct a housing production plan, to prepare a housing production plan. Although I'm not sure that we need town meeting approval
I think they're
to
funding
prepare
of
it. If we have the funding, we could start the preparation. Eventually, the housing production plan, in order to be subject to approval by the Department of Housing and Community Development, would have to be first approved by the planning board and the selectmen. So it's a fairly involved process. And also the plan has to be prepared. It has to be a thoughtful plan that is acceptable to the planning board and selectmen as to how the town should go about attaining its 10% goal of subsidized housing. We, as I recall, we said the master plan committee might put a little discussion into this, and why don't you give us a report?
We did discuss it. Housing issues actually threatened to take over the entire meeting. One person said we could spend several years talking about housing issues because they are complex. The Master Plan Committee's general feeling was twofold. One, they would like to know more, obviously, about what a housing production plan is. I think that's fair enough. I think probably the entire town wants to know that. But the other is their concern is that discussion of the housing production plan, if started now while we were in the visioning process, would threaten to swamp the whole process. So while they are certainly not opposed to working on it, they would be opposed to having it derail the visioning process. I did explain the timing of if we went to the annual town meeting and received funding at the annual town meeting, that funding would begin July 1st and would thus be after the visioning process ended. And that was fair enough, but they would be reluctant to take it up while dealing with the visioning process itself.
This, what was the consultant, did the consultant offer any views on this,
On the timing?
on the timing? Yeah.
Well, as you may remember from the time we first spoke about this, when I asked the consultant for a general timeline of how long it would take and how much money, they did note that a housing production plan had certain synergies with the master plan, such that the work that you would do for a housing production plan would, in part, supplement the work that you would do for a master plan under the housing element. So there is a benefit to the town to doing those two parts together. Certainly, the consultant has already put on the agenda for the first public forum, among the topics we'll discuss there will be housing. And obviously, affordable housing will be part of that discussion because we're talking about what's needed for the entire town. So and the planning board requested this, we actually put this on because of the request at our last meeting that this would be one of the topics at the first public forum. They did not offer an opinion on doing the housing production plan at the same time as the visioning plan, but obviously the scope for the visioning plan and the funding is very, very tight. So we would have to be careful that one did not swamp the other. And that was the opinion of the master plan committee.
Now, assuming that we get a town meeting approval in May,
Yes.
then waiting till July to ramp up seems like 3 months wasted effort. Would there be some way to get money? I mean, would the warrant committee, do you think, you as an old warrant committee star, would they be willing to front some money to get this thing started?
It's an interesting question. I mean, the reason it would have to wait till July, well, it would have to wait for July 1st to get the funding. We could certainly have an RFP ready to go. We could be doing the interviews. We could choose somebody before July 1st. I mean, that process we could start right now.
Well, right, we could,
So
we
that
could do
would not
the
be an issue. We just wouldn't be able to
the
pay for
RFP.
it. Yeah, we could absolutely start that right now. We just wouldn't be able to pay for it until after July 1st.
Well,
So,
but if there were money that came out of the reserve fund, would there be any way to get money back into the reserve fund?
yeah, you could do it that way. The mechanics are a little trickier. You could ask for a reserve fund transfer and then have the money available to fund it, but it has to be current year funding because you're asking for the current year reserve fund to fund it. I know they're worried about snow and ice because they always are at this time of year. I mean, that's only reasonable, but let me think about that. There's a mechanism to do it, but it would depend. I think you may, and I'm saying off the top of my head, I think you may have to do the current year refund to the reserve fund transfer out of free cash, and I don't remember what the free cash number is off the top of my head to know if there's enough. So let me look into that and see if that's possible.
Just as I'm listening and thinking about it, it may be a benefit to run them simultaneously because, you know, the visioning and the master plan on its own, and then the housing production plan on its own, it'd be nice to see how they come together, done independently.
Yeah, I agree that running the master plan and the housing production plan, the second half of the master plan and the housing production plan together right after doing the visioning plan would make a great deal of sense. I think if you start the housing production plan within the next month or so, start actually working on it, and we don't have the funding to do that, but even if you could, you run the risk of swamping the visioning process by having everybody focus on nothing but housing, and there's much more to the vision process than that.
Is the process similar to the master planning? Is it going to be, they're going to solicit a lot of input from the community, or is it something that a consultant, is it typically something that a consultant more or less works on their own? And then presents to you
Right.
to go through iterations to see if it...
It's a good question. The consultants gave us a range of funding that's based on how much public process we as a board, the selectmen and the community want. There needs to be a little bit of public process. You know, you do have to have at least one forum. You can have as many as you like, but there needs to be, you know, you don't want the consultant to just go off and write it on their own. So some of what we're doing and the first public forum in January will feed into that. What would probably happen is you'd have at least one public forum that was much more specific to that one issue for the housing production plan. But I don't know that you would need a lot of that. You know, the upper end of their range for the housing production plan, I don't think we need that much public forum because we've already done some for the visioning process. So for the whole
Would
master
they
plan.
present the housing production plan to the planning board?
They would have to, because the planning board and the board of selectmen have to approve it. So
At
what
that
would,
point, would there be a public forum on it?
you'd have one before, and then it would be a public meeting when they present it.
Well, that's my point.
Yeah,
is
no,
they
you'd
present
have
to the
one
planning
before
board.
to gather data and input, and then they would have a public presentation. We could probably do it, planning board and board of selectmen jointly, it would make a lot
I
of
mean,
sense.
I'm thinking the same as any zoning, you know, they'd come before the
Yes.
planning board, the public would have an opportunity to speak, the planning board would have some input, and they may go back and have to go, like I say, through a couple iterations before they
Yes.
get it to where the planning board, the community, the consultant is on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. This is not something that would ever be written in isolation. You would need, you know, you wouldn't necessarily need, but full public forums are quite expensive.
Mhm.
So you wouldn't necessarily need more than one of those, but you would certainly, or could certainly have a back and forth written into the RFP. How much you do that obviously bumps the cost up a little bit. But that's something that, as we look at an RFP, we can write and then discuss how many meetings we actually want to have and how we want that process. I mean, in some ways, we determine the process within the
No,
RFP.
the RFP would do it, and it seems to me that we should start preparing an RFP
Okay,
now. And,
I can collect some RFPs that are out there for housing
Right.
production
I
plans, as I
think
did for the
that,
master plan.
we should do that, and we might even put it out for bids before we have the money, if we make it clear that,
You can do it subject to appropriation.
Subject to
That's been done
appropriation.
before, and then that would actually give us a better idea of how much to ask town meeting for. So that's a way of doing it.
and then we would get a better idea of just how long this would take. And for those who say time is of the essence, it would be good if they were to help us out a little bit and specify just what sort of time is of the essence, because there is a big 40B proposed for Brush Hill Road, but I don't see how creating a housing production plan would affect that.
I don't think it could. There was a decision that came out a couple of days
Yeah.
ago. Yeah, so I was skimming through that one. And that indicated on a quick skim that it would probably not help the current one, but there is certainly a good reason to have a housing production plan in place for the town.
Oh,
And
no
we ought to
question, no
explore that,
question.
yes.
The question is just,
Timing of
I mean, if it needs to be done by a certain date because there is something critical that would occur.
Right,
It would, I'm not sure what that would be, but,
but it would be helpful to know that.
it would be helpful to know, that.
Okay, well, I'll
But
look for some RFPs.
let's get started with the RFP, because that is the start of any process, of any planning process, getting a competent planning consultant.
Mhm.
And I say consultant, the consultant doesn't do the plan, the consultant does a lot of work, but the planning board
Does the final plan.
would be in charge of the effort.
Absolutely. I'll get
And
those,
perhaps the selectmen.
I'll get those samples together for our next meeting.
That would be
See what I can
good.
find. Yep.
Now, so we have the potential town meeting article on marijuana clinics.
It's very much placeholder language.
Yeah, exactly. And let's see, what else? It seems
Oh, you're going to bring the model bylaw on that?
Oh, it
Yeah.
seems to me, we have Mr. Sullivan here, who has filed a citizens, as I understand it. You have filed a citizens article to do something with the Salamondo construction yard.
No, it's 591 Flugal Avenue. The nursery,
591, this one.
yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, why don't you tell us about it? Come on up. You can't be seen right now. So come and
Take
sit-
Bill's chair, yeah.
Sit there or there and tell us about what you're proposing and why.
Well, currently the property, it contains about 64,000 square feet of land, and there's two existing buildings on it. It was used as a nursery for quite a period of time. It hasn't been active recently, but when I looked at the site, I noticed,
This is right across from the school, isn't it?
yes, yeah, more or less, yeah, just slightly down the street from it. And the abutting houses on Bowes Hill Road were all 10,800 square feet for the most part, 90 by 120 lots. And there's 4 homes abutting this property along Bowes Hill. And, you know, I thought it would be, make good use of the property to clean it up and to make it residential. And it wouldn't have a negative impact on the neighborhood. There's an existing strip of land that could be used as a private lane and frontage for the 4 lots. They could be set up as fee simple or as a condominium association. And we've done a rough layout of the lots, and they're all, they're larger than what exists on Bowes Hill. They don't meet, obviously, the RA, the 40,000 square foot requirement of the zoning, but the night I filed the citizens article, John Cronin was in the office, and I spoke to him for a while. I had left him a message the day before, trying to get some background information on Bowes Hill as to why the lots were the size they were. Because a lot of the homes were built late 40s and in the 50s. And he informed me that the developer was Crosby. It was the father's son. The father owned the property, I guess, and that he had created a plan of subdivision for the Bowes Hill and Hillsview area, and with these size lots. And then the town passed their zoning bylaws, and so.
Well, come again, I didn't quite get what you just said.
According to what John Cronin had told me, he said that the owner, I forget the first name of Mr. Crosby, but he owned the property. He had hired an engineer to lay out the lots. He hadn't actually started constructing anything. It was pre-zoning that he had done this, and then the zoning got passed by the town meeting, and they created this area as a zone, 40,000 square foot requirement, 150 feet of frontage. So he went to the Board of Appeals and sought relief from the zoning. He said he had a couple of lots under agreement to build some homes for some people, and he requested that they consider allowing him to build at the C zoning, which was 7,500 square feet and 75 feet of frontage. So they, I haven't seen the decision yet. I'm still, investigating this. But relief was granted, and he did do the development. He built it over a period of a decade, so I think his son finished it out. And built some nice homes. It's a nice neighborhood. Bose Hill and Hillsview. And so it seemed like a good fit for, to create lots similar to what Bose Hill is. There seems to be a, a need for smaller homes. I would likely, if it got approved, market master first floor type units for the so-called empty nesters and people downsizing their homes. These homes would be likely be 3 bedrooms, around 1,800, 2,000 square feet. And but it's all right now, it's just a concept. I haven't had a chance. I've sent a letter out to some of the neighbors. I'm going to send some more letters out tomorrow. And I'm going to schedule a meeting at the Milton Public Library and invite all the abutters within 300 feet or more to attend to discuss the site and this concept anyways.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because you've got some abutters who own great big lots, 61,2.292 acres, 21,540, and then you have these 10,800 square foot lots. It's sort of, and this lot you have is right in the middle of, it's not the biggest, but it's bigger than a number of them.
Yeah, between the property to the left, the one that's 2.2 acres, the Haggertys live there, where Perkins Lane used to come down through his driveway when I subdivided the 610 and 614 Brush Hill Road. Part of the approval process, I agreed with Mr. Haggerty to end any rights to go down through his driveway any longer. So we gave up that right. But along his property line and the strip of land that's part of this 591 Blue Hill Avenue, there's a mound between the properties, and there's trees. It's heavily treed between the properties, so there's a pretty significant buffer between his property and this property. I haven't had a chance to meet with him about this. I did speak to him about another idea that I had about doing townhouses in there. He wasn't very receptive to that, so I scrapped that idea. And
Well, so we've got a article which is going to be on the May warrant.
It's been
A
filed.
citizen's
It has 10
article has been
signatures.
filed,
All right.
and it's surprisingly similar to some recent articles that the planning board has also filed. You're going to have to do a lot of convincing that this is a good thing.
Paul,
Yeah.
I noticed that you're applying it, in the allowed density, you're applying it to all zones?
Well, it's
Kind of
in
3C?
different,
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you've looked to see what other properties this might apply to.
I have. I don't think there's
Okay.
almost any, off the top of my head, I couldn't figure out any property that would meet the current
Okay.
requirements of this.
Yeah, I see you've got the frontage on State Highway as well, so that will limit some of it.
Yeah, there's been very few properties that have been used
there
as
is the
non-conforming.
Copeland Farms
Mhm.
site. The
Yeah.
Copeland Foundation would qualify. And I think that, given the fact that the rectory was used for doctor's offices,
Mhm.
it might qualify. Thomas's nursery might qualify.
Thomas's doesn't have a secondary frontage. That's one of the requirements in there. The St. Elizabeth does have two frontages.
You don't limit it to existing public or private way, though, so they could build a
They could
private
build a
way,
frontage.
and thus
Yeah,
create the
well,
frontage.
it's a placeholder. I spoke
Yeah.
after.
No, I know, I'm just
After
double
the
checking.
last meeting, I did speak to the current owner about the idea of waiting through October, and he has some issues with,
No.
because
That's fine, yeah.
it wouldn't close till middle of next year probably. if that.
Right,
So, he asked me if I have to research it some more, but you know, there is a path of going through the Board of Appeals,
Mhm.
in which,
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
yeah,
So-
I would probably go that direction, but I'm still researching.
What is that path? I mean, there's no, it's not not the variance route, is it some sort of special permit route?
That's what I was
Use
wondering, is
variance.
was there one?
I
Use
mean,
variance.
not for residential, I mean, it doesn't, I mean, a variance, there has to be something special about the land which isn't common to, say, the Haggerty's land, or anyone else's land in the area, that makes it just very special, and that special zoning relief should be given to it. And I'm not, I mean, anything is possible. But it doesn't seem to me that, I mean, you're not, under the law, entitled to a variance, which isn't to say that if no one objects, you might not get one, but
Yeah,
you've got to find out what the neighborhood thinks about this.
yeah,
And, you know, it would be useful, Paul, if you would do a little bit of conceptual work as to what you might be thinking of putting up.
oh, I plan on doing that. I've just started the process. I
Right.
mean, I just got the agreement very recently. You know, I hope to have it earlier in the year so we could, so I wouldn't have to file, you know, the citizens articles so late in the game.
Mhm.
But, no, I intend to meet with the neighbors and present plans and concepts. There'll be architectural plans, there'll be site plans, and,
Okay, that would be helpful.
yeah, it'll be well developed. I mean, we've already, I don't know if you received the plans that I did do so
Yeah.
far.
Yeah.
but-
That's, all right, well, thank you for the update on that, and we will, obviously, spend some time with this.
Thank you.
Now, any other town meeting articles that we're dealing with? We've got the funding articles for the plans,
Those should have been filed. I gave
Good,
you
good,
the
good.
revised language. so-
and the warrant committee will figure out what sort of funding they might recommend that they get.
We'll get some ideas as we get closer to that process. We have estimates, so it's just a matter of talking that over with them. And partly it will depend on whether or not we go for both the HPP and the second phase of the master plan,
All right.
so.
Now, 36 to 50 Elliott Street, we were going to sign the decision, but I was, in preparing it, I realized that we didn't really have good plans for the Henry House or for the, good plans for the carriage house, the new carriage house. And I went and I looked at the DeWolf building, which supposedly was going to be restored.
It does not seem to have been restored so much as completely rebuilt.
It doesn't look like the building that used to be there,
No.
which it was supposed to be the same building.
That was my understanding from what we had signed, yes.
So in any event, we want to make sure that the Henry House is,
Going to remain the Henry
is
House?
that this is a sensitive rehabilitation, historic rehabilitation. In any event, there is some loose ends, so we'll have that to sign at the next meeting.
Also, at the next meeting, our master plan consultants, Brown Walker, will be here to give you the first update. So,
I think that that's excellent. What time are they going to do that?
do we have a time set up for everything else? I can
I don't know. We don't have the town planner.
find out and set
All
it
right.
up at an appropriate time.
All right. How long do you think we should schedule? Let's see how much time we have.
Right, yeah, that
Because
works.
we could probably spend quite a lot of time
Mhm. I'll warn them.
well, I'm thinking an hour,
Yeah,
Mm,
I think that's reasonable,
isn't that?
yeah.
yeah.
What
Because I'm
about-
sure you guys will have a lot of questions, and it's a great way for publicizing the forum, which will happen 2 days later, so.
I think that's, all right, now, we have signed the Walcott Road subdivision. approval, and it will be filed tomorrow.
On the waiting for 36 to 50, we're not going to run into any time deadlines?
On what?
Waiting to sign 36 to 50 to get those plans?
We
We're not
didn't
running afoul
close
of
the
time?
public hearing until about 2 weeks ago.
So we're all set, okay.
And it
Just checking.
seems to me that if, we have 180 days, so
Just
I
double checking.
think that we're in,
Within that.
we're within it, and we're going to do it next time
Okay,
because
good.
it's a nice project and it's going to be a credit to the town.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right, what else? Anything else? Mr. Duffy?
I can't think of any, Mr. Chairman.
Any historical occurrences that occurred today in the past? I mean, obviously there were, but none immediately come to mind.
I know of none, sir.
All right, we're going to have to adjourn.
So moved?
All in favor? Aye.
Sweet.